get started. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ron Ward. I'm losing my voice for some reason. I work with the Student Employee Assistance Program, provides services to adult public schools and also to other companies and agencies in the city of Dalton. For those of you who don't know me, I used to be an administrator here at Dalton High School, and that ended the past school year when I retired as an administrator here. So this is my first really official time being back, so it's kind of a bittersweet moment for me. See a lot of people that I know and love and worked with for a long time, and so anyway, it's just good to be back home. My wife was going to come with me, but she's also retired, and she's in New York City. So I'm working to support her. And Callie, my granddaughter, and Callie's mom. So they're all in New York City. Let me get our session started. My last 2 or 3 years that I was here as administrator, I took it upon myself to entertain myself by writing thoughts for the day on my window outside my office. And I kind of developed a cult following among teachers and the students wanting to know what the next thought of the day was. So anyway, that's one of my favorites. And actually, it's going to be a theme for today's class. It'll give you a lot of ambiguity. This morning I spent a couple of sessions talking with teachers about the issue of depression. This afternoon's session is on anxiety, and actually my intent was to repeat the morning session this afternoon because I got so many people telling me that they had missed the morning session and wanted to hear it because they had heard that it was good. So I was ready to do that, but there was kind of a groundswell of objections from the group that I had this morning. There was at least this big, maybe bigger, saying, no, we want to talk about anxiety. So I said, okay, we'll talk about anxiety. So that's what we're talking about this afternoon. And I'll try to get you out here in a timely manner because I know that it's Friday and it's Friday afternoon, and this, I guess, is the last thing you guys have to do. You still have one more?
Yeah, we got a reflect.
Okay, well, I'll try and get you out of here, okay? Did everybody get this? Because I want to erase this.
Yeah.
Okay. I can't remember writing these up on my desk, on my window, and kids would come by and go, they'd be talking, oh, what does it mean? You know, I have to come out and explain it to them. All right. There are 3 primary emotions that drive us, okay? Of course, you know, there's a myriad of emotions that we as human beings experience, but there's 3 really root emotions that give birth to all the other stuff. And they are love, anger, and fear. Okay? The world that I now live in, working in mental health, the 2 primary mental and emotional disorders that I see, that I deal with, are depression and anxiety. Okay? Which of these emotions do you think would be the emotional root of depression?
Fear.
No.
Anger.
Okay? So, what emotion would be the root of anxiety?
Fear.
operational definition for depression is anger turned inward. It's anger that the person doesn't know how to express, or they don't feel like they have permission to express it. So they stuff it. The results of that are that it wears them out mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Symptoms of depression will include things like loss of interest, low motivation, isolating from other people, sleep disturbance, eating disruption, whether you eat all the time or can't eat at all, bouts of angry explosions. Those are all symptoms of depression. Anxiety, the operational definition for anxiety is fear that's been turned inward. It's fear that I don't know how to express, or I don't feel like I have a safe outlet or permission to express it. So you stuff it. And it also plays itself out in fairly predictable ways in the life of the person. And we'll talk about that some. As I said, my intent this afternoon, because of comments I received, was to repeat the discussion on depression. But by and large, the group that I had in the first session this afternoon wasn't having any of that. So I'm just going to ask you all, is anxiety become a part of your daily routine?
Yes.
And I'll tell you all the same thing I told them. That breaks my heart for you all. 'Cause I worked real hard in my 19 years here to make sure that this was a safe place for you guys. And I'm not saying it's not and that it's gotten worse because I left. I'm not doing that. All I know is that when I come over here to the school to talk to kids, I spend as much time talking to teachers as I do the kids. They'll see me in the hall and stop me and pull me in the room and want to talk. And people are afraid. They're scared. And it's not just here. I'm working with teachers from other school districts who are going through the same stuff. There's an oppression on you all that's resulting in anxiety. I almost did just a group counseling session in the last session because people just needed to talk. And we may do that in here also. I do want to try and give you some tools, to help self-diagnose and to give you some things that you can do in order to help. But one of the things that was brought up by one of the people in the first session was that it was her estimation that the anxiety that people were dealing with it's not there because of what's going on at home. It's what's going on the job. Okay, would you all agree with that?
Yes.
Would you mind sharing just what's the source of the stress? What is it that's going on that's creating the anxiety and the fear? What's going on?
The fear of the test scores.
Test scores and how that's going to reflect on you.
Yes. Job security.
Job security.
The superintendent needs to be in here really.
Well, you can be assured that the responses that I've been getting and that my coworkers have been getting are going to be forwarded. I can assure you. All right.
The workload is just overwhelming. It feels like we've got so much to do other than just teach the kids. It's everything
Love
else.
on the ones that need to be loved on before they can do anything else.
Yeah, and the
Time
fact that
attention, please. Again, I apologize, we're still need one more car move, please. The white Volvo S40, the white Volvo S40 is parked in the driveway going down to the field house. It's right near the baseball field. Again, a white Volvo S40, Gordon County tag.
Who's from Gordon County? Everybody goes.
221. We need you to move your car immediately, please. We have buses that need to access that area. Thank you.
Okay.
There we go, interruption.
Somebody else can say Connie. I just know when I walked through the hallway 10 years ago, it used to be happy, smile, see each other, cut up. And now it's, everybody's got this look, like intense, like boom, boom, boom. And you don't even have to high five. And it's bathroom maybe once a day. It's just, it's.
You don't even see the person walking past you.
And I would say in the last just few years, it's just the joy, the luxury of just a moment. I remember I talked to the life coach one day for the insurance, you know how we all have to do that? You know what they told me? Do you have time to take off your shoes and go walk outside barefoot for about 30 minutes a day? I said, you know, I only got to pee once a day. That's where we are.
I'm writing these up here because I don't want to forget them, but there was some others. What were some of the others?
Feeling of not being supported.
Yes.
The feeling that you're not supported, like no matter what you say or no matter what you do or how hard you work or how much you give, you're not being supported within that school or within the administration. That you're given everything you can give, but you don't have that support.
Unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, not just us, but even kids. I mean, not to say we don't hold them accountable and high, but I mean, you can't get little Johnny who can't read on the 2nd grade to 5th grade in a year, and you're like, but you're testing, it's gotta be there.
I feel we're not being able to get to know the kids because we're too worried about.
relationship.
Yeah.
I miss that.
I do too. The building relationships with the children as well as their families. That used to be a big, big part of who we are. And now there's not the time.
It's,
I have to teach you multiplication. I don't have time to know you.
Yeah.
I hate that.
They come in crying and you don't have the, you've gotta stop and get attendance in and you've gotta get the field trip money and you gotta start at 8:30 because so-and-so's pushing in and you can't stop and really take that time to love the child and say, we're gonna have a great day.
but Mary Ellen, I think that goes to too, the fact that we say, we practice, we say one thing and we preach one such thing and do something totally different. In the school system, we say, oh, it's all different. We're all about making sure kids get what they need, the whole kid. But then when reality hits, we're about, you better get in there, you better get that done, we ain't got time for that, don't be loving on that kid, you gotta get this done, and then send them out the door.
And then you carry guilt because you're supposed to go sit down. I mean, I don't have time to do that right now.
One of the filters that, when I was part of the administrative team, was part of the hiring process, one of the filters that we had in place was about relationships. And when I was a part of the team, our philosophy was, and I believe it's true, the kid doesn't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I tried to live that out myself every day, not just with the kids, but with the staff and parents. And I hate that you see that going by the wayside. Now, I'm not saying that's true, but you all are feeling that, and perception is reality, and that's obviously causing you all to be anxious and stressed. Paul, I think you had your hand up.
I think our kids are bringing more baggage to school.
Kids are more high maintenance.
Well, stuff's going on at home.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, just as a whole.
And we want to help with that, yet our names are tied to numbers that they're supposed to produce, and we can't, I'm not really responsible, or shouldn't be held responsible for what that kid does on test day 1, 2, 3, 4, 42, however many there are, without dealing with that emotional stuff first. I can't help what they do on the test if their mama hasn't touched them in 2 weeks and doesn't care to.
I've said this many times, and you all probably, I'm assuming you know this to be true, but for a lot of our kids, the best thing they got going in their lives is being in school. Some of our kids go home to hell, or worse. And the best thing they got is school, because they're here, they know they're safe, they got a roof over their head, they got people that care about them, and they're getting a couple square meals a day.
But that's changing now. I mean, that, I believe it's true what you're saying, but now you said safe. We have safety concerns in school, so that's an anxiety. Then you say, that they know they're loved. As much as we'd like to show them, we don't have time always like we need to show them. So those things are now becoming secondary to that feeling that we wanted to, what we started out, we're getting away from.
What I've noticed is a trend is parents are not on the teacher side. The parents are on the kid's side, and they don't wanna support you as a teacher. When the kids aren't doing their job.
I wanna speak to that just for a minute, and it's, because as a counselor at the high school, we sit in on a lot of those meetings. And I think it's a twofold issue, and like if I had a magic wand, I would wave the wand over all of our teachers, because you guys are the professionals. And so sometimes I get a little frustrated in those meetings, because I see teachers sometimes cower to the parent. And I'm not saying that to all of you, but you guys are the professionals, and you, what you do every day is amazing, and you work really hard. But I think, again, we've got all of this other stuff on top of us, and you've got all this other stuff on top of you, and so you don't feel that support, and you don't feel that, you know, that what you're saying is valued, or, and so I think that kind of resonates sometimes, and that's when parents sort of push. But I wish that you had the confidence sometimes, and you had the support, so you felt like you could be that professional, and tell the parent, look, this is what's happening, and this is how your child's behaving in class, and it's not me, this is something you need to do, but we don't have the support yet from here for you to say that without feeling like your job may be on the line, or that you may be written up, or something's gonna happen in TEKS. But that bothers me more than anything, because I do see that. I see that teachers come in and the parents are like, well, hey, can you make this up from first semester, and it's May? And so a teacher feels like I have to do that, because, you know, if I don't, then, you know, there'll be repercussions for that. But if I had a magic wand, that's what I would wish for all of you, because you are professionals and you know your job and you do your jobs very well. It's just that because the support's not coming from here.
We're not being treated as professionals.
No, we're not.
Right.
No, it's the problem.
Right. And so,
By
I
who?
see that.
By support, by administration. Parents.
Yeah.
Administration.
Yeah.
Society.
I feel like also that it doesn't matter what we do, it's never good enough, and there's never any positive feedback.
And these parents don't even teach their kids accountability and responsibility. They think that, oh, I'm just gonna be coddled and I'm going to just, you know, I'm gonna have support at home because my parents are just gonna enable me. I hate that. I hate the fact that they enable me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they don't wanna push them.
No, they don't.
Make them work.
But it's our job. They'll point fingers at us. Oh, no, it's your job, but if we do it, oh, you're not supposed to do it, that's my child.
Right.
What do you want?
There's a lack of parenting, I think, in this community, and I don't know if it's the high poverty rate or the diverse cultural backgrounds that we have, but yeah, I'm in elementary school, and like, we don't have time to teach table manners, and we don't have time to teach like taking turns and sharing and things that parents need to be teaching their kids, respect for adults, respect for authority. And that's concerning, because this is our future.
Sorry, Ron.
Do you have more time?
Hey, let's just circle up. So, you guys have got a lot of triggers.
And those things are out of our hands.
Right, and that's usually the core issue, is that there's stuff coming at you that you didn't make it, you didn't create it, and there's nothing you can do to fix it. So it kind of gets back, you've all heard of Alcoholics Anonymous, right?
Yes.
And I'm assuming that most of you who've heard of that organization, have heard of Al-Anon. Okay, Al-Anon is the partner for Alcoholics Anonymous. It's for the families of the alcoholic or the addict, okay? Because they have issues that they have to go through and resolve. Most of it about self-care and quit focusing on the addict or the alcoholic. Back in the 1950s, a national Alcoholics Anonymous, whatever, they had their big national convention in Chicago. And the keynote speaker was a Catholic priest who was a recovering alcoholic. And he opened the convention with a prayer that has become copyrighted and spread into our culture now for years, and to the point that where a lot of people think it's a scripture verse, and it's not. It came from the 1958 Alcoholics Anonymous convention in Chicago. But the prayer has been named now the Serenity Prayer. And it goes like this, says, God grant me the serenity, which is peace of mind, to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Okay? Well, Al-Anon adopted that prayer also, but they changed it to fit their mission. And their prayer is this: God grant me the serenity to accept the people that I cannot change, the courage to change the people that I can, and the wisdom to know that it's me. Okay, get it? So you guys have a lot of stuff that you have no control over. Okay? And I hate that. I'm married to a retired teacher. I spent the better part of my adult professional life working where you guys are working. So I still care very deeply. And for you all and for our kids both, because it's a dynamic that's going to adversely affect the whole deal. Okay? So given those prayers, and the reality is that the only thing that you have any control over is you, what can you do to start taking care of yourself? Because we can sit here and wring our hands and hit the table and do all that stuff till we turn blue in the face, okay? And we're not going to be any better off than we were when you all walked in here at 2 o'clock, okay? How many of you in here, not just because of what's going on right now in your work site, but just throughout your life, that anxiety has been an issue that you've had to deal with, or you know somebody that anxiety has been a part of their lives? Can you share with us some of the tools that worked in helping to deal with the anxiety, to at least manage it, or to, go ahead.
Something a good friend of mine taught me a long time ago, Debbie Barkley, that I had to prioritize because all this stuff was on me, and I was like, I gotta get this done, I gotta do this, and she was like, Jan, just do one thing at a time. Get this done, and then go move to the next. So just prioritize, and you know, what can be done right then. And what am I in control of? I can't stress about the things that I can't control.
How many of you remember Ronnie McClure? Used to be a teacher and coach here. My son Aaron was on Ronnie's team that went to the state championship in 2000. We went to Statesboro and got our clocks cleaned. And quite frankly, if we'd have gone back and played that team 10 times, they'd have cleaned our clock 10 more times. They were just that good. But I'll never forget, Ronnie was notorious for sayings, stuff to try and bring the team together and have a theme and a message for them to live by. And kind of goes back here what Jan said right here, what can I do now? His was win. And it stood for what's important. did that because one of the things he was dealing with on those teams was substance abuse. And I'll never forget Aaron and Mitchell Boggs coming to the house and talking to me, because I wasn't in education at the time, I was in private practice as a counselor. And the previous year, which was my other son's senior year, they sabotaged that season because they won their first 6 games and everybody started partying and they lost the last 4. Well, Aaron and Mitchell didn't want that happening to their team, so what they did is they came to me and said, what can we do to keep that from happening? So I sat down with them and they came up with a contract, expectations about what they expected of all the seniors on that team. And so we had a cookout out on my deck. I fed 18 or 20 seniors about 80 hamburgers. And then they went down, Evangelin's been there, you know what I'm talking about. And we went down to the basement, and Aaron and Mitchell handed out the contract and said, here's the rules, we're gonna discuss it, and at the end, you're gonna sign it. If you won't sign it, if you don't wanna sign it, don't play. And that team went 13-2 that year. And the bottom line, and Ronnie picked up on it, and came up with a sweatshirt that had win in big white letters on a red t-shirt, and it said, what's important now? And it kind of goes back, Jan, to what you said, what can I do now? All this stuff you have no control over. So what is it that you can take control of? And what I have found is that when you start taking control, at least of that one piece, it kind of it reduces the fear element, it reduces the stress, the anxiety, okay? Even though it may not reduce all of it, all these other things still exist, but at least in this one area, I'm doing something constructive about it. Okay? What else? What are some other tools? What can I control? What else? What are some other tools that you've seen others use, or that you've used, or somebody you're close to has used?
You can make sure that you eat well and exercise to release stress. I mean, obviously. Yoga, let me throw that home.
Exercise, it releases endorphins, folks. Those are natural mood elevators. You know, if you do that, it will necessarily make you make you tired or sore, but it'll also make you feel better emotionally, just how the endorphins work. And also, eat correctly. Not like me, like Haley, Evangeline did. What else? What are some other tools that you have seen implemented, or that you've implemented to help deal with anxiety?
A strong tribe.
Okay. Reach out to others. Don't isolate. One of the hallmark symptoms of anxiety is that you isolate. Had a girl in the previous session that talked about that anxiety has been a close friend of hers all of her life, and that she went to see a counselor and got help with it. And one of the things that she would do was that she would isolate herself, and it was it's kind of like I had a kid yesterday, as a matter of fact, who self-referred to the SAP program. And so I asked him, I said, why? You know, what's going on? He said, I'm tired of feeling alone. And I said, why are you alone? And he started telling me his story, and basically what has happened is he has suffered so many losses. His parents divorced, grandfather that he was close to died, grandmother he was close to died, best friend of his died. And he was so tired of getting hurt that he just decided he was just going to keep everybody at arm's length. And I said, so you just kind of built a room around yourself and locked the door? He said, exactly. And I said, now the room's getting pretty lonely. He said, exactly. He said, I want to come out. I said, come on out. He's like, well, I'm afraid. And I was like, well, then stay in the room. He said, well, I don't want to be in there. I said, well, then come on out. And then he started with, I'm looking back here because there's a girl sitting right where you are that was talking about somebody that she's in a relationship with, that anxiety is part of them. And every time she tries to get them to reach out for help, they come up with all these excuses about why they won't or can't do that. And so I said, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen if you come out of the room? He said, well, I'll get hurt again. I said, is there any chance that you won't? And he said, yeah. I said, let's focus on that. I said, in fact, what I would suggest is come out of the room, leave the door open, you can always go back in. So we kind of processed it that way, and so what I spent my time doing was shooting down the excuses that he was making to keep himself isolated and in fear. Okay? Reaching out to others. It's really important, because how many of you knew before you came in here that you had so many other people that were sharing what you were dealing with? I mean, how many of that was oh, so you already knew that. Okay. No surprises there. Okay. All right, reach out to others, connect with somebody else, okay? And if you don't have that person, get a professional, okay? Get somebody that's paid to help you, okay? All right, what else? What are some other tools?
What I like to do is just acknowledge the ones that are less significant and just let it go.
Let it go.
Just let it go.
Break out into song?
Yeah, just let it go, bring out the song, yes. But no, just don't worry about the least important stuff. Just let it go. Don't stress over it. It's not important.
Let me kind of give you some risk factors for people who are prone to anxiety. People who have been through trauma. If you've ever been traumatized in some way, abused, neglected, or something like that, fear is a constant companion. Okay? It predisposes you to emotionally responding to anything with fear, or fear of being hurt again. Next one. Stress due to illness, especially those of you who have been, or somebody that you know who's been chronically ill. That type of situation causes them to be fearful of the next ache or pain, or how's this going to look? How's this going to play 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road? What am I going to look like? What's the quality of my life going to be? That causes anxiety and fear. This is the one that you guys are dealing with. And if you don't know what that is, just look over board number 3. Okay. Any one of these by themselves, I know for a fact that every one of you in here could handle any one of these by itself with half your brain tied behind your back. But all of it taken together is overwhelming. And that's what I'm talking about now, predisposition. You've got a buildup of all this stuff just hitting you from every conceivable angle. Then you go home and you got stuff to deal with. It's just overwhelming. So stress buildup. Personality. Some of you, just because of the type of person you are, the personality you have, are more predisposed to anxiety than others. And I'll tell you who you are. You are perfectionists. You are warriors. You are heroes. Anybody know where that term hero comes from? It comes from work that's been done with dysfunctional families. It started with alcoholics and addicts. Now it's been expanded to any type of dysfunction in the family, whether it's sexual abuse, emotional abuse, angry explosions, whatever. People who grew up in or live in those types of houses now assume very specific roles, okay? you've got the person who's dysfunctional at the hub of the wheel. Everybody's lives revolve around that person, okay? Whether it's alcoholism, addiction, physical abuse, sexual abuse, rageaholics, whatever. Everybody is very cognizant about that person's mental and emotional state, and they adapt accordingly, okay? And they end up going through life living that way, okay? One of the roles is the enabler. That's the person who goes behind that person and cleans up mess, makes excuses for their behavior. But the other role is the hero. And the hero is usually the oldest kid. That's usually the one that takes it upon themselves to make sure that this family makes it one way or another. They're overachievers, they're hard workers, they wear themselves out, and as they get older, you know what they do for a living? They go into helping professions. They become pastors. They become social workers, counselors, and teachers. You all are doing this for a reason. Dynamics took place in your lives that led you to where you are. The thing that makes me sick about myself is, one, I'm so stinking stereotyped, and the other one is I've done them all. I was a minister, I was a counselor, I was an educator. Okay, I'll just do them all. So, you're here for a reason. Life circumstances wired you to do what you're doing, and you're good at it. But the problem is that it predisposes you to be anxious. Perfectionists. How many of you in here deal with perfectionists?